Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminita Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivashesha Sunyavadi Paschachada Shatanine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Vanchakalpa Trubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhu Evya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Saturday Satsang, New Govardhan Dham Temple. This is my second time giving this class. The first time everyone left. Today they left again. They're all in Mexico. We're going to have a retreat there in April, so they're checking out a very nice spot in Mexico. Yeah, all the brahmacharis went to Mexico except... It's in Ensenada, which is actually about an hour and a half south on the beach. It's really nice. There's these two big houses, so the women will stay in one and the men will stay with one. There's a place for programs. It's right on the water. It's going to be a really nice place to have a retreat. It's Balaram's big idea. He's been trying to plan it for years. So me and Bhakta Ji and Balaram went down a couple weeks ago, and now he brought the crew down to check everything out and make sure it's going to work. It's pretty exciting. So last time we talked about the 3 modes of material nature. This time we're going to talk about chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures. But that's going to lead to a really wonderful story that we're going to share from the Bhagavatam that's going to really illuminate those concepts at work and do something really quite inspiring. So last time we read the chapter. This time I just have a brief overview to give us the information that we need to dive into the story from the Bhagavatam, which is really, it's probably my favorite story that I've come across in the Bhagavatam, so I'm actually really excited to share it with you guys. So I have very little realization. I'm a young bhakta, so I have to stay really close to Prabhupada's text because I don't know much. So I'm just going to be so happy that Prabhupada's given us the Gita and the Bhagavatam so fortunately so that we can read his, his words and become inspired. So chapter 16 is titled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. The last chapter was chapter 15. It was describing the banyan tree of the material world, but it doesn't describe the fruits. So these are the fruits of that tree. The good fruits are the divine qualities. The bad fruits are the demoniac qualities. This is a very short chapter. There's only 23 verses, and they're basically just going back and forth, showing the difference between divine and demoniac. And then that's going to be illuminated in a battle between a demon and a divine personality. So the first 3 verses are talking about the divine qualities, which are in the mode of goodness, which lead to liberation. So those qualities in the first 3 verses are listed as fearlessness, which is a dependence on God, purity of consciousness, which are prescribed by rules, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity for the grihastas, self-control, especially in sex life, sacrifice, especially for the grihastas, Vedic studies for the brahmacharis, austerity, which can be of body, mind, and tongue, simplicity, being straightforward, non-violence, not checking one's progress in life, truthfulness, not lying for personal interest, freedom from anger, even in provocation, renunciation, using things in Krishna's service, tranquility, unagitated, peaceful, equiposed, aversion to fault-finding unnecessarily, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetedness, which is jealousy and greed, gentleness towards all living entities, modesty, no abominable activities, steady determination, not agitated, even in failure, vigor, protecting the needy, which is for the Kshatriyas, which is who Arjuna is, who Krishna is having this discussion with, forgiveness for others' minor offenses, fortitude, mental and emotional strength, cleanliness, internal, mind, and external, body, freedom from envy, you're not resentful, and for freedom from the passion for honor, respecting others. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharta, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Now, conversely, Krishna then lists the demoniac qualities, which are in the modes of passion and ignorance, and those lead to bondage. They're short. It just says pride. You want to make a show of religion, even if it's sinful. Arrogance, pride in one's own wealth and education. Conceit, desire to be worshipped by others. Anger over trifles. Harshness, rough language in front of others. Ignorance, lack of discrimination, whimsical action. These qualities belong to those of the demoniac nature, O son of Prita. And so Arjuna, upon hearing this, he actually has a moment where he's like checking himself. He's like, oh, wait a second, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a killer. Am I demoniac? He's really worried he's hearing this list. So Krishna further tells him, you don't have to worry, you're actually not demoniac. He ends his lamentation by further describing the demoniac qualities, assuring Arjuna that no, you were born with divine qualities. What's interesting on Sanskrit is that a few of these qualities you have here, like anger and also knowledge, they're positive in the divine qualities, and then they just add the letter A before them, and they become negated in the demoniac qualities. So you have krota, anger, in the demoniac qualities, and you have akrota, which is not being angry, in the divine qualities. So that's what we kind of see here, is the divine and demoniac qualities are two ends of a spectrum. So you can just take the opposite of what a demon does, and it's divine, and you take the opposite of what someone who's divine does, and it's demon. It's a completely different type of mentality. You can see that the demoniac quality is very interested in ego, in accumulating items. It's a very material perspective. It's putting themselves in the center. The divine qualities are putting Krishna in the center. They're about selflessness. They're knowing Krishna's in control and being a servant of his will. But because we need to be very careful and aware of the demoniac qualities, that we have most of the rest of this chapter describing what those qualities are. So they do not know what is to be done, and they don't know what's not to be done. They don't have cleanliness, nor good behavior, nor truthfulness. Their conclusions about this world are false, or that this world is false. It's without foundation, with no God in control. It has arisen without cause, and is produced of sex desire or lust. The demons are lost to themselves and have no intelligence. They engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. So, what are the activities that these demoniac people do, and then what are the consequences? So, taking shelter of insatiable thirst for enjoyment and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, they are illusioned, attracted by the impersonal, and they are always sworn to unclean vows. Their attitude, they believe that the ultimate goal is to gratify their senses, so they take unlimited anxieties at the end of their life. They're looking from the external to satisfy some internal hankering in the internal, and that doesn't work. Because as Maharaj always says, if you're trying to enjoy material nature, it's either going to burn or not last. So you're always going to be hankering. They're also not rooted in the present moment. They're lamenting about the past, and they're in anxiety about the future. So engagement, bound by a network of 1,000 desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. They're always thinking about gaining wealth. I gained this wealth today. I will gain more as per my desires. I killed this enemy, and I will also kill my other enemies. I am the Lord and enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest and highest born. No one is so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices, give some charity, and thus rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So they also call the demoniac qualities the royal road to hell, whereas the divine qualities are given you liberation, and they're prescribed according to your varna and your ashram. So your duties are different based on what stage of life you're in, whether you're a brahmachari or a grihasta or a vanapras or a sannyasi, and also what your business is. I mean, Krishna, he's the perfect warrior. I mean, his business is killing the enemy, but he does it in a way that's divine, so he's not accruing karma for it because he's discharging his duty perfectly. His motivation is defending religious principles. It's not to kill others. So how do we get to hell? Well, Perplexed by various anxieties, bound by a network of illusions, demons become strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into an unclean hell. And they give some examples of the hellish planets, which, if you're following Bhagavatam class, the last canto, the end of 5th canto, they described all the different hellish planets, and they're really a bad place to go. And they're very unique. Whatever kind of sin you've sort of taken refuge of, you get this counteractive measure given to you in the form of punishment to help root you from that. And it's really not a great place to go. It's temporary, though, which is interesting. You know, whether you're going to the heavenly planets or the hellish planets, it's a temporary designation where you're either burning off your bad karma or enjoying the fruits of your good karma. But we're born on the earthly planet, so we're in a perfect position right now. This is a middle planet, not too much enjoyment, not too much hellish conditions, so it's very ripe for spiritual realization. So please take advantage of this life to pursue spiritual path on this middle planet and not be allured by the, flickering sense enjoyment of the heavenly planets or by these activities which will lead you down to the hellish planets where you won't be able to remember Krishna, or it will be very, very difficult. So they're very hypocritical. This is the age of Kali. It's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And so, of course, the demons are going to be extra super hypercritical. So they're self-complacent and always impudent. They're deluded by wealth and false prestige. They sometimes proudly do sacrifices, but in name only, and they don't do those sacrifices following any scriptural rules or regulations. So what happens if you continue on the demoniac path? Well, you take shelter of your false ego, your strength, your pride, your lust, and anger, and you're thus bewildered. So those are all bad fruits. They're eating the bad fruits. The bad fruits are temporary, and they become further deluded, taking refuge of their false ego. I am the doer. That's the false ego. The very first knot, they call it the hard knot, ahankara, material existence, and we have to push through into this material body. Soul goes right into false ego. This idea of I am the enjoyer, I am the doer. It's very hard to undo. They become envious of me, Krishna, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others. They blaspheme against the real religion. So how does Krishna treat these people? These are, Suresh would laugh, these are the rascals and the fools. Let's see how they treat them. He perpetually casts the envious, cruel, and the lowest among men into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Attaining repeated bursts amongst the demoniac species, such fools can never approach me, O son of Kunti. Gradually they sink down to the lowest status of life. So how do they get out of it? The chapter ends by showing if you give up your demoniac tendencies, you can begin to follow Scripture. And that, as what the Christians would call, is the fear of God. You hear that constantly in the Old Testament. The fear of God. What the fear of God means is to obey His commandments. So if you're a demon, you're not interested in Scripture. You're just doing sense enjoyment. You're just following your senses. And so if you start to give up sense enjoyment, then you start to say, well, how do I satisfy this craving inside me? Which is really just the soul crying out to experience Satchidananda. So then we have to follow instruction from, the acharyas and Scripture that teaches us how to become closer to the Lord, who is the ultimate source of satisfaction. So there's 3 gates leading to this hell that cause the soul, that cause the degradation of the soul. They are lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give them up. I remember when I was training, when I went to college, I was studying law, and I had an attorney professor who would talk about, he would always talk about, he goes, what are the 4 things that will get you fired? He would say this to us all the time. What are the 4 things that will get you fired? He's talking to people that are basically training to become law enforcement. And the acronym is GALP, G-A-L-P. So it's greed, anger, lust, which we see here. And the 4th one that he had is P, peer pressure. So these are the things that will get you fired in your job. If you're greedy, if you're lusty, if you're angry, or you give in to peer pressure, you do the bad things that your associates are doing. So we see that right here. Oh, and they also, in the Buddhist path, they call these the, what are they called? They're called uncontrollable urges. So no matter what you try to do to mitigate the feelings of lust, anger, and greed, you can't control them. You have to detach from them. If you try to in any way give in and control anger, lust, and greed, you can't do it. You can only do it by detachment. Because you get it, if you're angry at someone, you keep thinking about it, you just get more angry. If you're lusty for something, you want to eat something, and you can smell it, as long as that sense object's there and it's in front of you, you're going to have trouble controlling yourself. So just remove yourself. So one who has escaped these 3 gates performs acts conducive to self-realization and gradually attains the supreme destination, or liberation, which is found by the mode of goodness. So if you don't respect the Scriptures, he who disregards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection, nor happiness, nor liberation, which is the supreme goal. But the chapter concludes, if you follow the Scriptures, therefore, from the evidence of Scriptures, one should understand what is duty and what is not. Knowing these regulations of Scriptures, one should act so that he may be gradually elevated. So you can clearly see the difference between divine and demoniac nature. Now this will be illustrated by a battle between the biggest and best of the demons and then the best of the divine. So this is coming from the 6th canto, which is what we're studying right now in Srimad Bhagavatam class, but this is coming up in chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12. I think we're in chapter 4 right now. So this is a battle between Vṛtrāsura and Indra. So Indra, he's dear to us, because remember the pastime? Do we have a picture of Krishna lifting the hill here? Yeah. So remember, he's jealously showering down all the rains on Govardhan Hill, and then Krishna lifts it up and protects us from him. So Indra plays really well into the kind of mood here at New Govardhan, because he's directly part of a famous Leela that we actually celebrate very frequently and live amongst all the time. But maybe you haven't heard of Vṛtrāsura. So Vṛtrāsura came about because Indra, he kills a demon named Vishvarup. And Vishvarup's father is really upset at Indra. So he does a sacrifice, a yajna, to try to kill Indra. But he does it slightly off. It's one of those situations where he's chanting the Vedic mantra just a little bit off. And what ends up happening is it springs forth a demon named Vṛtrāsura, and that demon is set on killing Indra. And this demon is super powerful. And so all the demigods, they fear this demon, and Indra is the king of the demigods. So they don't know what to do. There's this really nasty demon that's been born, and they don't know. So they run to Krishna, and they say, hey, help us. We got this really nasty demon that's on the prowl. What are we supposed to do? So Krishna advises them, here's what you do. You go and you get this powerful thunderbolt, and then you'll be able to kill this super hardcore demon named Vṛtrāsura. So that's what we're picking up here at the end of chapter 10. And then chapter 11 and 12 show this really awesome battle. Now the reason this is important, and I don't want to blow the lead on this because you'll see this happen in here, is that Vṛtrāsura is actually a pure devotee. So this is a really awesome situation where you have a demon who I'm going to describe to you in a minute as being super, super powerful. But he's preaching pure katha to Indra while he's fighting him. So he actually has divine qualities. But he's a demon. So it really illustrates both those polar aspects of the spectrum combined into one. So this is actually my favorite pastime in the Bhagavatam that I've come across so far. So Vṛtrāsura, Indra, okay, king of heaven. So we know him already. I'm sure you're familiar with Indra. But Vṛtrāsura, here are the other names for him. If you look him up in the Sanskrit database, and it shows all the names for Vṛtrāsura. So he's called the great hero. He's called very powerful. He's called the best of the demons, which is the title he shares with Hiranyakashipu. He's the hero among heroes. He's the commander of the demons, and he's also the enemy of Indra. So we'll move very quickly through this pastime, and then thank you so much for being here tonight. So we're picking up at the end of the 10th chapter. We're about to have a really hardcore battle between Indra and Vṛtrāsura. Armed with the thunderbolt, so they obtained the thunderbolt, the demigods, they prepared themselves to fight and got up on the backs of elephants. These are the demigods. At the end of Satya Yuga, in the beginning of Treta Yuga, a great fight took place between the demigods and the Asuras. Unable to tolerate the effulgence of the demigods, the Asuras fled the battle, leaving Vṛtrāsura, their commander-in-chief, to fight for himself. Vṛtrāsura, however, seeing the demons fleeing, instructed them in the importance of fighting and dying in the battlefield. One who is victorious in battle gains material possessions, and one who dies in the battlefield attains a residence at once in the celestial heavens. So in either way, the fighter benefits. So here we are, chapter 11, text 1. Sri Sukadeva Goswami says, O King Vṛtrāsura, the commander-in-chief of the demons, advised his lieutenants in the principles of religion. But the cowardly demoniac commanders, intent upon fleeing the battlefield, were so disrupted by fear they could not accept his words. O King Parikshit, the demigods, taking advantage of a favorable opportunity presented by time, attacked the army of the demons from the rear, and began driving away the demoniac soldiers, scattering them here and there as if their army had no leader. Seeing the pitiable condition of his soldiers, Vṛtrāsura, the best of the demons, who was called Indra Satru, the enemy of Indra, was very much aggrieved. Unable to tolerate such reverses, he stopped and forcibly rebuked the demigods, speaking the following words in an angry mood. O demigods, these demoniac soldiers have taken birth uselessly. Indeed, they have come from the bodies of their mothers exactly like stool. What is the benefit of killing such enemies from behind while they are running in fear? One who considers himself a hero should not kill an enemy who is afraid of losing his life. Such killing is never glorious, nor can it promote one to the heavenly planets. O insignificant demigods, if you truly have faith in your heroism, if you have patience in the cores of your hearts, and if you are not ambitious for sense gratification, please stand before me for a moment. Shukadeva Goswami said, Vṛtrāsura, the angry and most powerful hero, terrified the demigods with his stout and strongly built body. When he roared with a resounding voice, nearly all the living entities fainted. When all the demigods heard Vṛtrāsura's tumultuous roar, which resembled that of a lion, they fainted and fell to the ground as if struck by thunderbolts. So what he's doing is very cunning, if you see that. All his soldiers are running from him. He's the only one left on the battlefield. So he's not a coward. He's the best of the heroes. So he begins chastising the demigods for attacking his soldiers as they're fleeing. It's very smart that he's doing that. He knows he's outnumbered. He knows they're all going to die, probably. But he's saying to them, you cowards, you're killing us as we're running away. You're supposed to be noble. So that's actually pretty strategic as a commander, right? What could he do? Right? He's going to take on the whole army. But he's saying, don't kill my guys, and you guys are going to look foolish if you kill my guys who ran away foolishly in fear. So as the demigods closed their eyes in fear, Vṛtrāsura, taking up his trident and making the earth tremble with his great strength, trampled the demigods beneath his feet on the battlefield, the way a mad elephant tramples hollow bamboos in the forest. Seeing Vṛtrāsura's disposition, Indra, the king of heaven, became intolerant and threw at him one of his great clubs, which are extremely difficult to counteract. However, as the club flew toward him, Vṛtrāsura easily caught it with his left hand. O King Parikshit, the powerful Vṛtrāsura, the enemy of King Indra, angrily struck the head of Indra's elephant with that club, making a tumultuous sound on the battlefield. For this heroic deed, the soldiers on both sides glorified him. So now we have glorification of Vṛtrāsura. The demigods and the demons are saying, wow, you caught Indra's trident and you smashed his elephant in the head with it. They're probably also very scared because they were just terrified by his huge roar. Struck with the club by Vṛtrāsura, like that of a mountain struck by a thunderbolt, the elephant, Arvatata, feeling great pain and spitting blood from his broken mouth, was pushed back 14 yards. In great distress, the elephant fell with Indra on its back. When he saw Indra's carrier elephant thus fatigued and injured, and when he saw Indra morose because his carrier had been harmed in that way, the great soul Vṛtrāsura, following religious principles, refrained again from striking Indra with the club. Taking this opportunity, Indra touched the elephant with his nectar-producing hand, thus relieving the animal's pain and curing its injuries. Then the elephant and Indra both stood silently. So Vṛtrāsura is showing moral code here. He refrains from striking Indra again because he's fallen to the ground. I remember I was impressed when I heard in the Mahabharata that they're fighting this great battle during the day, but then when nighttime comes, they all eat together. So there's a sense of morality in Vedic battle, which is, what to speak of what's happening in today's world in time. That's the guerrilla warfare we're basically at now. But here we have an enemy who has really harmed Indra, but he's stepping back and letting Indra compose himself because he wants to fight him fairly. O king, when the great hero Vṛtrāsura saw Indra, his enemy, the killer of his brother, standing before him with the thunderbolt in his hand, desiring to fight, Vṛtrāsura remembered how Indra had cruelly killed his brother. Thinking of Indra's sinful activities, he became mad with lamentation and forgetfulness. Laughing sarcastically, he spoke the words as follows. Sri Vṛtrāsura said, he who has killed a Brahmin, he who has killed a spiritual master, indeed, he who has killed my brother is now, by good fortune, standing before me face to face as my enemy. O most abominable one, when I pierce your stone-like heart with my trident, I shall be freed from my debt to my brother. Only for the sake of living in the heavenly planets, you killed my elder brother, a self-realized, sinless, qualified Brahmin who had been appointed your chief priest. He was your spiritual master, but although you entrusted him with the performance of your sacrifice, you later mercilessly severed his heads from his body, the way one butchers an animal. Indra, you are bereft of all shame, mercy, glory, and good fortune. Deprived of these good qualities by the reactions of your fruitive activities, you are to be condemned, even by the man-eaters. Now I shall pierce your body with my trident, and after you die with great pain, even fire will not touch you, only the vultures will eat your body. This is the demon chastising Indra for very, very, very bad actions that Indra did, and was actually cursed for and had to disperse the reactions from all the sins to the world, which was actually suffering because of it. So where is the moral code here? This is like the two ends of the spectrum kind of meeting in the middle, and we have a demon chastising Indra with some accurate accusations. You are naturally cruel. If the other demigods, unaware of my prowess, follow you by attacking me with raised weapons, I shall sever their heads with this sharp trident. With those heads, I shall perform a sacrifice to Bhairava and the other leaders of the ghosts, along with their hordes. But if in this battle you cut off my head with your thunderbolt and kill my soldiers, O Indra, O great hero, I shall take great pleasure in offering my body to other living entities. I shall thus be relieved of my obligations to the reactions of my karma, and my fortune will be to receive the dust from the lotus feet of other great devotees like Narada Muni. O king of the demigods, since I, your enemy, am standing there before you, why don't you hurl your thunderbolt at me? Although your attack upon me with your club was certainly useless, like your request of money from a miser, the thunderbolt you carry will not be useless. You have no doubts about this. Because the thunderbolt was decreed by Krishna to give to him. So he knows, okay, I can beat your weapon, but the weapon you got from Krishna, I'm not going to beat you with that. So why don't you do it? It doesn't matter if you kill me. He's not afraid to die. O Indra, king of heaven, by the force of your thunderbolt, I shall be freed of material bondage, and shall give up this body and this world of material desires. Fixing my mind upon the lotus feet of Lord Sankarshan, I shall attain the destination of such great sages as Narada Muni, just as Lord Sankarshan has said. Persons who fully surrender at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always think of his lotus feet are accepted and recognized by the Lord as his own personal assistants or servants. The Lord never bestows upon such servants the brilliant opulences of the upper, lower, or middle planetary systems of this material world. When one possesses material opulence in any of these three divisions of the universe, his possessions naturally increase, and so does his enmity, anxiety, mental agitation, pride, and belligerence. Thus, one goes through much endeavor to increase and maintain his possessions, and he suffers great unhappiness when he loses them. O Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead forbids his devotees to endeavor uselessly for religion, economic development, and sense gratification. O Indra, one can thus infer how kind the Lord is. Such mercy is obtainable only by unalloyed devotees, not by persons who aspire for material gains. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship? This is the best of the demons. He's praying like a devotee does. O Lord, my source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides, nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be a master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. O lotus-eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them, as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously for the time of milking when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects, I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct devotional service unto you. O my Master, O my Lord, I am wandering through this material world as a result of my fruitive activities. Therefore, I simply seek your friendship in the association of your pious and enlightened devotees. My attachment to my body, wife, and children and home is continued by the spell of your external energy, but I wish to be attached to them no longer. Let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached to you. So now Indra kills him. Sukadeva Goswami says, desiring to give up his body, Vṛtrāsura considered death in the battle preferable to victory. O King Parikshit, he vigorously took up his trident and with great force attacked Lord Indra, the king of heaven, just as Kaitaba had forcefully attacked the Supreme Personality when the universe was inundated. Then Vṛtrāsura, the great hero of the demons, whirled his trident, which had points like the flames of the blazing fire at the end of the millennium. With great force and anger, he threw it at Indra, roaring, exclaiming loudly, O sinful one, thus shall I kill you. Flying in the sky, Vṛtrāsura's trident resembled a brilliant meteor. Although the blazing weapon was difficult to look upon, King Indra, unafraid, cut it into pieces with his thunderbolt. Simultaneously, he cut off one of Vṛtrāsura's arms, which is as thick as the body of Vasuki, the king of the serpents. Although one of his arms was severed from his body, Vṛtrāsura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw with an iron mace. He also struck the elephant that carried Indra. Thus, Indra dropped the thunderbolt from his hand. The denizens of the various planets like the demigods, demons, Charanas, and Siddhas praised Vṛtrāsura's deeds. But when they observed that Indra was in great danger, they lamented, Alas, alas! Having dropped the thunderbolt from his hand in the presence of his enemy, Indra was practically defeated, and he was very much ashamed. He dared not to pick up his weapon again. Vṛtrāsura, however, encouraged him, saying, Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament your fate. Vṛtrāsura continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavad. He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and he knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. All living beings in the planets of this universe, including the presiding deities of all the planets, are fully under the control of the Lord. Thus they work like birds caught in a net, who cannot move independently. Our sensory prowess, mental power, bodily strength, living force, immortality, and morality are all subject to the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Knowing this, foolish people think that dull material body to be the cause of their activities. O King Indra, as a wooden doll that looks like a woman, or as an animal made of grass and leaves cannot move or dance independently, but depends fully on the person who handles it, all of us dance according to the desire of the Supreme Controller, the Personality of Godhead. No one is independent. The three Purushas, Karanadakashai Vishnu, Garbhodakashai Vishnu, and Shirodakashai Vishnu, the material nature, the total material energy, the false ego, the five material elements, the material senses, the mind, the intelligence, and consciousness cannot create the material manifestation without the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A foolish, senseless person cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although always dependent, he falsely thinks himself the Supreme. If one thinks, according to one's previous fruitive activities, one's material body is created by the father and mother, and the same body is annihilated by another agent, as an animal is devoured by the tiger, this is not proper understanding. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself creates and devours living beings through the other living beings. Just as a person is not inclined to die, must unless give up his body, also his longevity, opulence, fame, and everything else at the time of death, so at the appointed time of victory, one can gain all these things when the Supreme Lord awards him by his mercy. Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equiposed in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death. In their effects, represented as happiness and distress, one should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but qualities of material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions of these qualities, should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Remember, he's just lost an arm. Now he's preaching pure kata. Oh, my enemy, just look at me. I have already been defeated, for my weapon and arm have been cut to pieces. You have already overwhelmed me, but nonetheless, with the desire to kill you, I am trying my best to fight. I am not at all morose, even under such adverse conditions. Therefore, you should give up your moroseness and continue fighting. Oh, my enemy, consider this battle a gambling match in which our lives are the stakes, the arrows are the dice, and the animals acting as carriers of the board game. No one can understand who will be defeated and who will be victorious. It all depends on providence. Shukadeva Goswami said, hearing the straightforward, instructive words of Vṛtrāsura, King Indra praised him and again took the thunderbolt in his hand. Without bewilderment or duplicity, he then smiled and spoke to Vṛtrāsura as follows. Indra said, O great demon, I see by your discrimination and endurance in devotional service, despite your dangerous position, that you are a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul and friend of everyone. You have surmounted the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, and because of this liberation, you have given up the demoniac mentality and have attained the position of an exalted devotee. O Vṛtrāsura, demons are generally conducted by the mode of passion. Therefore, what a great wonder it is that although you are a demon, you have adopted the mentality of a devotee and have fixed your mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who is always situated in pure goodness. A person fixed in devotional service of the Supreme Lord, Hari, the Lord of the highest auspiciousness, swims in the ocean of nectar. For him, what is the use of water in small ditches? Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Vṛtrāsura and King Indra spoke about devotional service even on the battlefield, and then as a matter of duty they again began fighting. My dear king, both of them were great fighters and were equally powerful. O Maharaj Parikshit, Vṛtrāsura, who was completely able to subdue his enemy, took his iron club, whirled it, aimed it at Indra, and threw it at him with his left hand. With his thunderbolt named Sataparvan, Indra simultaneously cut to pieces Vṛtrāsura's club and his remaining hand. Vṛtrāsura, bleeding profusely, with two arms cut off at their root, looked very beautiful, like a flying mountain whose wings had been cut to pieces by Indra. Vṛtrāsura was very powerful in physical strength and influence. He placed his lower jaw on the ground and his upper jaw in the sky. His mouth became very deep, like the sky itself, and his tongue resembled a large serpent. With his fearful, death-like teeth, he seemed to be trying to devour the entire universe. Thus, assuming a gigantic body, the great demon Vṛtrāsura shook even the mountains and began crushing the surface of the earth with his legs, as if he were the Himalayas walking about. He came before Indra and swallowed him, and Arvata, his carrier, just as a big python might swallow an elephant. When the demigods, along with Brahma and other Prajapatis and other great saintly persons, saw that Indra had been swallowed by the demon, they became very morose. Alas, they lamented, what a calamity, what a calamity. The protective armor of Narayan, which Indra possessed, was identical with Narayan himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Protected by that armor and by his own mystic power, King Indra, although swallowed by Vṛtrāsura, did not die within the demon's belly. With this thunderbolt, King Indra, who was extremely powerful, pierced through Vṛtrāsura's abdomen and came out. Indra, the killer of the demon Bala, then immediately cut off Vṛtrāsura's head, which is as high as the peak of a mountain. Although the thunderbolt revolved around Vṛtrāsura's neck with great speed, separating his head from his body, it took 1 year, 360 days, the time in which the sun, moon, and other luminaries complete a northern and southern journey. That's how long it took to kill this demon. A whole year the thunderbolt had to travel. Then, at the suitable time for Vṛtrāsura to be killed, his head fell to the ground. When Vṛtrāsura was killed, the Gandharvas and Siddhas and the heavenly planets beat kettle drums in jubilation. With Vedic hymns, they celebrated the prowess of Indra, the killer of Vṛtrāsura, praising Indra and showering flowers upon him with great pleasure. O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, the living spark then came forth from Vṛtrāsura's body and returned home, back to Godhead. Jai. While all the demigods looked on, he entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Lord Sankarshan. So thank you for listening. I know that was a lot. But that was pretty cool, huh? So we see demoniac attitude, we see divine attitude, and then we see them kind of mixing together in this wonderful mix of, fighting with the demigods. And ultimately, Krishna's will is done. He's glorified in the end. And it's really quite awesome. But I challenge you, if you're ever in a battle with a demon and you lose both your arms, you preach pure kata before your head's cut off with a thunderbolt. So if we can only be so proud. Hare Krishna. Jai. Jai. Thank you. Haribol. Yes. Jai. I went long, but thank you for letting me play with the story. I appreciate that. Thank you, Hare Krishna.